Another transfer story that I read today is that Arsenal, Man United are looking at him as well, but Arsenal are looking at potentially going after Olise. What do you make of that, Dio? Someone to really challenge Bukayo Saka.
Olise is an amazing player. Olise is going to want a lot of game time. Will he get that at Arsenal with Saka right now? I don't think so, and I think it's not. If I had to speak to him as a brother, I'd be like, for your career to grow because you're also young, I wouldn't go to a club where I'm not going to get a lot of minutes. I'll go to a club where I can lead the lines. Bukayo Saka, for his age, most people forget that he's just 22. Has a lot of experience so far in the Premiership at 22. And I think what we need right now is, if we're going to bring competition, it's either we bring somebody who's way better than him and we put Saka on the bench, and then Saka needs to realize he needs to step his game up, or we bring somebody who's going to just complement him. Olise is at the point where he needs a lot of minutes. He's not a complementary player anymore. And the reason I say that is, if you look at Crystal Palace, every time him and Eze are injured, Crystal Palace just dips. Anytime they're in the game, it's like it's like night and day. You're like, is this the same Crystal Palace? So he's an amazing player. I would love for him to come to Arsenal. That would be great, but I don't think he would want to sit and play 15 minutes at the end of every game under Saka. Like, there's no point. Yeah, you're too good to do that, right? So if he were my brother, I'd say, hey, go somewhere else where you get a lot of minutes, win something with them, and guess what? Arsenal will look at you and look at Saka and be like, let's sell Saka and replace him with Olise, and we'll find somebody to be Olise's understudy. Go become that good. I don't think he's better than Saka right now as regards to, so he's not going to get those minutes over Saka, but he's an amazing player. I don't know if Arsenal should go for that. Do we need that right now? I think we need a striker. Gabby Jesus can be Saka's understudy because he has injuries back and forth. He plays right wing as well. We have left wing Martinelli and Trossard already. We need a striker. We need another midfielder, and we need backup for Saliba. I think that's what we need. So for me, I'm not trying to. Yeah, Olise is going to suffer in Arsenal. He won't get minutes. He just won't. He's an amazing player, but he won't get minutes there. As compared, like, an injured Saka is played every week. Like, an injured Saka is played. There's Gabby Jesus on the bench who's coming off for 10 minutes that can play the same wing. So I think I don't know if it's a good fit for him, for Olise. It's a good fit for Arsenal.
I understand that. Let me throw this to Dan. I get what he's saying, but is that the problem for Saka? That there is no one of high quality that's challenging him for his position, and he has to play injured because Reece Nelson isn't good enough to play 4, 5, 6, 7 games and maintain Arsenal's levels. Gabriel Jesus spends a lot of his time out injured. Is it right, in your opinion, for Arsenal to say, do you know what, Saka, we love you. You're one of the best right side of the attackers in the league, but we're going to bring somebody in who thinks he can keep you out of the team. Is that not better for Arsenal than just having someone of Reece Nelson's level supporting him?
I mean, yeah, on paper, it's better for Arsenal, it's better for Saka. But the way that Arteta plays Saka, like, no matter what, he can have like a niggling, nagging injury. He can be getting kicked and limping all over the pitch. He won't bring him off. Like, whoever's coming in, if it is Olise, like, like, Saka is Arteta's guy. So whatever happens, unless he doesn't have to, he ain't dropping him. He ain't taking him off. And I don't think that would change with a player like Olise. He might try and shoehorn Olise into another position. But yeah, they desperately do need challenge and cover, because I think Saka, when he has bad games, it sort of goes under the radar. Do you know what I mean? So it makes sense, but to spend 60 million, the release clause, around that, on a player that, like I said, if you're Arteta, look at Ramsdale as well. He promised him, oh yeah, you're going to be, getting cup games or this, that, and the other. He ain't rotated that goalkeeper position once. He's not really a rotate manager, I don't think, Arteta. So as much as it makes sense to everyone else on the outside, it's great to have a big bolstering squad. I just don't think it's practical for how Arteta is.
And also, Terry, let me just say this. My thing is, if you bring Olise in, you're trying to make him to make Saka better. No, Olise is not the one to make Saka. Go bring somebody better than Saka for me. Like, that's my thing. Go bring somebody who, when he comes in, benches Saka for the first 5 games, literally.
Who's that?
Well, Arsenal, see what this is why we have to start winning things so that we can be in that type of conversation. We actually have to start winning now to be able to look and look at the rest of the world and be like, you know what?
Yeah, but
because
for me, let's just say you won the Premier League and Champions League this year, hypothetically. Who is that right-sided attacker in the world that you believe is better than Saka that Arsenal would still be able to buy? Who is that person?
Well, what's his name is going to Real Madrid. What's his name? Is going to Real Madrid. Then Madrid is going to have a couple of players that we can look at. Rodrigo and the likes are there, because once this guy gets to Real Madrid, they're going to be now.
Mbappe,
once Mbappe gets to Madrid, then they become the guys who are now being trying to be shoehorned into that position. We can bring such a player. Like, let's say we won based on the analogy that you're giving me. I mean, these are the kind of conversations I want Arsenal to be in, where it's like, you know what, because Olise, right, I think that he's going to become an amazing player. To bring him to Arsenal will be doing him an injustice. It will be doing Arsenal justice. Arsenal will benefit from it, depth-wise, squad-wise. And of course, we would win stuff with it. But if we're just talking generally, like, about football and about the, you know, the players and what's best for them and what's best for a club, you know, it has to be a match, you know. And if you're going to be competing at the highest level, then if Saka has reached his ceiling, let's say at this age where he's like struggling to break that ceiling, then go bring somebody better than him. You know, that's what I would do. I would rather go for somebody better than him, and not somebody who he can still best on for a whole season and still put on the bench. Like,
I agree with you. I get where you're coming from. I agree with that. But I also look at it this way. I'm not saying you're out here saying no to Olise because you're personally trying to protect Saka.
No.
But I think it can work the other way as well. I think so. I bet if you spoke to Olise, I bet he respects Saka. I bet he looks at Saka as a top player. But I bet that Olise thinks he could be better. And for me, I think there's an element here of you should almost let that battle. You as Arsenal shouldn't you should and shouldn't care when he comes to you about his development. If he comes to you and can't get in the team regularly, but Saka therefore gets better and you become better, if in 3 years' time Olise then moves on and he hasn't progressed as a player, as an Arsenal fan, I don't think you should really care about that. It's about creating competitions and I think that's something Arsenal have got to start to do. Now, you can do it by top filling. So go out and buy a better striker this year than Havertz to do that. Absolutely. But when you've got someone of Saka's level, it is very difficult to buy better. But I think you need an understudy at the very least, but you need an understudy that isn't just going to sit there and go, I'm so happy being on this bench. Because I think that's what Reece Nelson is. I think Reece Nelson got his new deal. And I think Reece Nelson has probably gone, I ain't getting in front of Saka. I ain't going to push too hard to get in front of Saka. I'm taking my 50, 60, 70,000 pound a week, whatever I earn. I think Nketiah is very similar. He's on 100 grand a week. He's got a comfortable position. And I think both of those players are like in the comfort zone. You need individuals that are not. I think you need individuals now coming in that almost want to, in a positive way, this is, rock the apple cart to help push you to that next level. Yeah. I think it's so. I remember speaking to Liverpool fans about this after they won their. I said this to Liverpool fans after they won their first league title, and they wouldn't have it. It was like, well, if you sign this guy, who's going to drop out your team? Who are they going to challenge? And the way Liverpool fans are talking is like, oh no, they're all going to play. And I'm like, no, you need to create this competition. As fans, you've got to put the pressure on. That's what keeps you getting better. Since then, they've won 2 Carabao Cups and an FA Cup. So for me, it's a case of when you start to get close to winning it, or you do win it, that's when you've got to make the competition even harder. And I haven't watched all of it yet, but there's a documentary out about United's 99 team. And in that, Ryan Giggs says that the hardest games of football we played most weeks was against ourselves in training, as opposed to, because we found the training games where it was 11v11 harder than most of the matches we played at weekends, because the squad had so much competition in it where you may or may not be in the first team. Our 11v11 games where we were fighting to be in the first 11 was so competitive, it made us the best team in the world on the football pitch. And that is what, again, how do Arsenal get, they can't improve by much. It's narrow margins now, but it's millimeters, potentially inches you can get better. How you do that is by making the squad overall better. No one's position in that team should feel safe, probably barring the goalkeeper. And I think Olise could be a person to do that for you.
But then you've got to look at it from Olise's perspective. If you're Olise, Arsenal have been competing for the league the past 2 seasons. On paper, great, get to play for Arsenal, big club. But if you've got offers from Liverpool, Man United, Arsenal, if you're someone like Olise, you're going to go for the one I think that has the greater need for you, like post Salah Liverpool if he leaves, like Man United, who they need a lot. Like that you're going in there and they need you. You're not going in there to have to try and fight for the play position of someone that's been that mainstay week in week out. This team needs me now, and I'm going to factor in now.
Yeah.
I think that's the club you're going to choose, right? Rather than, as much as it might be good for Arsenal, I think that's the better choice for them.
So on that, if Man United and Liverpool and Arsenal all fighting out for him, I think in terms of Arsenal missing out because of that, I agree that is very plausible and very normal. I'm just looking at this from an Arsenal perspective around should they be pushing for it? Absolutely. But I think, listen, I'd love Olise at Man United. I think it's crazy really because Ahmad's now starting to look good and you're like, well, maybe we should develop him. I view it this way. No, bring him in. And then you remember that scene in the Dark Knight where the Joker breaks the pool cue in half and says, we're hiring. There's 2 guys. We're hiring, but there's only one position. He throws the broken cue pool down to say, fight it out. Whoever survives gets employed. There's almost an element of that where you want
imagine Olise the broken pool cue.
Yeah, there you go. Fight out for who's going to. But you almost want that. One of the big problems at Man United over the past decade has been people not being able to handle. I'm a massive fan of Anthony Martial. But my only real bugbear with him, barring the injury problems in his latter stages, was every time we brought in another player that could compete with him, whether it be Lukaku, whether it be Zlatan, he shrunk. He shrunk as a player, and you could see it in him, where when he was the main man, he would deliver. But the problem that you have, and his fanboys never understood this because they took it as a personal dig at him as opposed to the problem that made for Man United is, I don't want to upset Martial. I don't know him as a person. I'm sure he's a lovely bloke. But I need a striker that sees competition and raises his game, not one who shrinks. Because to be a team that can genuinely win the Premier League, genuinely win the Champions League and compete year in, year out, you need that level of competition. And if you don't have the mental fortitude to handle not being... That's why some players look better at smaller clubs where they're the main person, because that's how their mindset works. They struggle. Some people like being a big fish in a small pond. Others like being small, some people like being a big fish in a big pond where there's predators around, and that gets the best out of them. And I think that's what you've got to thrive for me, is to know that your position's always under threat. And I think bringing Olise into Man United, you've got Ahmad there, you've got Garnacho. I think these guys would bring the best out of each other, but they're all very young. And what we need to really add is that Ivan Toney age and profile. That's why I like the idea of Matoma on the left. He's 26, turning 27. It just gives you some slightly more experienced players who can really help to nurture them. But I think Olise's class, and I'm looking forward to seeing him now move to a higher level where the pressure's on.
Quick addition. Olise, like you said, for Arsenal would have been a great idea. But the reason I'm saying that Arsenal needs to pat it from the top is bring better players than what we have now is 2 seasons in a row, we've been there and not been able to get over the edge. I don't need somebody trying to compete with you. I need somebody better than you to come in. That's what we need to get over the edge. Like, we literally need to bring in people who are... I mean, I would rather have Saka coming off the bench. If I could get a Rodrigo or an Mbappe. Like, of course, I know we can't. Don't get me wrong, but I'm saying I would rather have Kai Havertz coming off the bench if I have a striker like Isak, right? Like that for me is depth. That for me is squad. I'm not going to bring another striker who's going to be competing with Havertz from behind because Havertz had good GA this season. No, neither am I going to try to bring a player to compete with Bukayo Saka from behind. Like, for us to get over the line, we have to get people who are better than them, and that way we now know that our squad is, it's either the better or the same, which is now like for like in positions. So even if we're going to be playing a team in the FA Cup or a team for the league, we know that whatever we're putting out consistently is quality. And that's why we dropped out of the FA Cup last season and the Carabao Cup. We're playing the likes of Nielsen. The gap is too wide.
I totally agree. I totally agree with you on that. Moving